and gentlemen, Nick here, and welcome to my ranking of Doctor Who Series 6, or Season 32. By the way, sorry for any noise outside. The dog started barking just before I started recording. Prick. Anyway, so, Doctor Who Series 6. Like my Series 5 ranking, I've only got a little bit of time before to do this before I have to do something else. And I've got an extra 2 spots to talk about this time, because we've got Christmas Special, and whilst we've still got 13 episodes of the series, we lose a two-parter. There's only two two-parters here, so we've got 12 spots to talk about. So let's get started with the episodes and stories that will be appearing in this series. And they are A Christmas Carol, The Impossible Astronaut and Day of the Moon, The Curse of the Black Spot, The Doctor's Wife, The Rebel Flesh and the Almost People, A Good Man Goes to War, Let's Kill Hitler, Night Terrors, The Girl Who Waited, The God Complex, Closing Time, and The Wedding of River Song. And I just realised now I could have looked on the back of the DVD box set. I was struggling to remember one title. You'll see in the bloopers. Anyway, so, yeah, we'll be ranking these 12 stories. Episodes 1 and 2 and episodes 5 and 6 are a two-parter, so they'll count in the same spot. Let's begin with number 12, my least favourite story of the series. And it's one of these two-parters. It is, in fact, The Rebel Flesh and the Almost People. Yeah, I'm not too fond of this story. Okay, the Rebel Flesh wasn't terrible. It was okay. But the Almost People lets it down a lot more. Rebel Flesh was alright. Almost People was a bit of a train wreck. The story I don't think is that great. Written by Fear Her writer Matthew Graham, and whilst I was okay with Fear Her for the most parts, this story I'm not really a fan of. Supporting cast are probably the weakest supporting characters of a series 6 episodes, even more so than Curse of the Black Spot, where we didn't get to know much about them. And the villains, well, we're supposed to sympathise with them, but it's difficult to sympathise with them whilst they're also trying to be murdering their human counterparts. And similarly, we're supposed to be, I don't know if we're supposed to be rooting for the humans or not as well. It's quite confusing. Who are we siding with in this story? It's definitely a rehash of the much better Silurian story from the last series, in Series 5. And it's really just there so we can connect some dots for the series arc. And whilst it has some great series arc connecting stuff, and that final scene was brilliant, but the story itself is kind of a weak link and it doesn't quite work. Mind you, having two 11th Doctors is pretty fun though, and both Matt Smiths work off each other really well. That's some really great stuff there. And it does have some great moments for Rory, but ultimately this is my least favourite story of the new series so far. It's not that great. Okay, move on to number 11. Another episode that is pretty weak, and it's probably the next worst story of the new series so far. And that is Let's Kill Hitler. Okay, on a personal note, I think The Rebel Flesh and the Almost People is worse, but if we were going by objective worst... No, it's still The Rebel Flesh and the Almost People, or at least The Almost People in going by individual episodes. But Let's Kill Hitler is a very close second. And the main problem is, it knows what it wants to do, but it's pretending it's going to do something else first. You shouldn't pretend to do something. It's got this whole thing about, let's go and kill Hitler, the 1938 Berlin setting. And then it just focuses, it just decides to do an episode about River Song. And we're thinking, maybe doing an episode on River Song set in 1938 Berlin with an attempt to assassinate Hitler, perhaps that would have been a great story. Or just a dramatic, character-driven episode about River Song, just set anywhere, basically. It could have been set anywhere. Maybe they could have found River Song, rescued her, and then maybe then they only to realise that it's a trap. She's trying to kill them, and eventually they have to try and de-brainwash her or something. That could have been a great episode, but unfortunately we got whatever the hell this was. The inclusion of the Tesselector is only there so it can appear in the series finale, which we'll get to, and ultimately it just feels like a massive disappointment. This is the first episode to come after the revelation about who River Song is, and it's the first episode of Series 6 Part 2 after coming back from a couple of weeks break. And unfortunately, it's a massive disappointment. Yeah, it could have been so much better. It could have been a much better character-driven episode for the main 4 characters, and maybe even have the Tesselector in there if you wanted to include it, but As it is, it doesn't quite work. And as well as the active character-driven stuff, we could have had a great episode about Hitler and how the characters reacted about whether they should kill him or not. He's one of the greatest wartime criminals of all time, but like with Genesis of the Daleks, do they have the right to deal with him in their own way? That could have been it could have been a great Genesis of the Dalek style story, morality story. And even if they didn't do the morality stuff, they could still do an interesting story about meeting this infamous war criminal historical character. But instead, they just lock him in a cupboard and completely forget about him. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. You can tell that was sarcasm. Well done, Stephen Moffat. You gave us exactly what we wanted. Moving on to number 10. This is an episode where I just think it's okay. It's not that great, but it's okay. Another story where the supporting characters aren't so amazing, but they're a bit more likeable than the ones from the last two places on this ranking. The Curse of the Black Spot. Yeah, I just think this one's okay. It's enjoyable fluff, filler episode. It's got some weaker moments, but it's not terrible. It's just okay. It's a little bit bland in places, a little bit uninteresting, but I still think it's alright. It's enjoyable. Could have been worse. I think it's the most forgettable episode of the series, to be honest. It's this or Closing Time, but Closing Time has links to the finale, so yeah, this one's probably the most forgettable episode of the series. Moving on to number 9. The story should have been so much better. This story should have been so much better. The Wedding of River Song. The series finale. Awesome start. First hour, 19 and a half minutes. Absolutely amazing. Then the rest of it kind of goes downhill. A little bit of a train wreck at the end. And ultimately a bit disappointing. The main problem is that the characters don't really learn anything. Haven't really learned anything from the main for the series arc. River's trying to avert the Doctor's death by actually preventing herself from killing the Doctor, and the Doctor has come up with this last-minute plan to escape, as opposed to either accepting it full out and maybe being rescued at the end or something, or planning out a way to avoid his death, Seventh Doctor style, and being able to trick his enemies so that they would believe he is dead, and then he would go off and be quiet. But what actually happens is that he's fumbling around for a bit after investigating the science. He fumbles around for a bit on a farewell tour, like the 10th Doctor did before his regeneration. Then he accepts his death, and then he has a last-minute change of mind. And whilst he does trick his enemies, it isn't in a particularly interesting way, and it kind of it devalues the character's journey throughout the series, especially in Series 6 Part 2. So it doesn't quite work. The story has also got a lot of stuff going on, with all of time taking place at the same time. The Resistance by River, Amy, Rory and others against the Science breakout, and the whole marriage with River Song, plus setting up for future stories in Series 7, or specifically the end of Series 7, and the time of the Doctor at the end of the 11th Doctor's era. So it's really caring more about setting up the story and trying to be an all fancy ending, as opposed to actually being a cohesive and character-driven ending. It could have worked as a more character-driven story, but ultimately it doesn't quite work. Moving on to number 8, this story has a very similar problem, where the first 2/3 are brilliantly character-driven, but it's the main villains of the story get awfully treated, especially in the last third, and it's a rushed finale. A rushed climax, just so it can have the final scene at the very end to time with the finale. Number 8 is Closing Time. Closing Time's first 2/3 are brilliant. Great character-driven stuff. I mean, fair enough you don't like James Corden, or fair enough you don't like the mundane nor present-day Colchester setting. Fair enough if you don't think it's moving very fast, but I think the character-driven stuff works really well, and it's quite a fun episode. And the idea of the Cybermen being trapped down below the shop is a good idea. However, the Cybermen get poorly mistreated. The whole stuff with the Cybermat, whilst great in the first 2/3, when the Doctor reprograms it, comes to absolutely nothing. It completely ignores stuff that was previously said about cyber conversion, established in both Doctor Who and spin-off show Torchwood with the episode Cyberwoman. Yes, the episode with cyber breasts. Trust me on the fact where I say it actually has some good stuff to say about Cyberman conversion, as it's following off the bat not too long after Army of Ghosts and Doomsday. I'll do Torchwood reviews in the near future, and I'll talk about that episode when we get to it. But that one does have a good thing to say about cyber conversion and how there's no going back on it. And we see this again as well in the Doctor Who series, apart from Yvonne Hartman, who's able to somehow reject cyber brainwashing, but by that point she's already turned into a Cyberman. There's no going back for her. And the same for Jackie Tyler from the parallel universe in Age of Steel, although that was mainly just she only just recognised Pete and Rose as opposed to getting her emotions back. But in closing time, Craig, somehow he has his emotions removed and the conversion has started, but once Alfie starts crying and he hears it, somehow he fights back against the conversion, and he's completely fine. How? So this episode kind of slaps in the face of the cyber conversion stuff that was previously established, and it kind of lets down the story as a whole because of that. And not only that, but the ending is fucking rushed. It's a rushed ending, and it's terrible. It's a terrible, terrible climax to an otherwise great episode. Such a shame. Sorry for the annoying noises outside. Okay, moving on to number 7, and we're getting to the good stuff, as opposed to the good stuff but let down by something, or the bad stuff. So number 7, I think it's a good episode. It's not amazing, but it's good. The 2010 Christmas Special, A Christmas Carol. The 2010 Christmas Special, and Doctor Who's take on the classic Charles Dickens novel and story. I think this is a good episode. It's fine, it's enjoyable, it's got some good stuff, and it's a nice take on the A Christmas Carol story, as I just said. I don't think it's particularly perfect, I don't think it's that amazing, but it's still fun, enjoyable, and some great moments throughout the story. And also get some great supporting cast with Michael Gambon being absolutely amazing as Kazran Sardik, with his younger counterpart, Lawrence, something, I've forgotten his surname again, but the actor who goes on to be the young Professor X in X-Men First Class. He does a great job as young Kazran, and Catherine Jenkins does a great job as Abigail Pettigrew. Amy and Rory sadly get sidelined for this episode, but otherwise the characters are handled really well and the actors do a great job. And I think, yeah, it's a good episode. It's a good, fun episode, and it's got some nice original stuff, like with the fish and the giant shark. It's a nice fun. If it wasn't based on A Christmas Carol, this would have been a really great and imaginative Christmas Carol inspired story. Like Trial of a Time Lord was partially inspired by A Christmas Carol for the past, present, future stuff, but it is it's not a direct adaptation of Christmas Carol. It's a Doctor Who spin on the story, and for what it's worth, it's fun, it's enjoyable, nothing more, nothing less. Next, number 6, the series opener, The Impossible Astronaut and Day of the Moon. The Impossible Astronaut is a brilliant first episode. That is a great way to hook an audience. That is a great way to start off a series mystery. And whilst it does get a letdown resolution at the end, that's at the end. This is the start. This is the setup. And it's great. It's brilliant. And the stuff that follows in America 1969 is great. Day of the Moon gets in a bit of a muddle, unfortunately. It kind of muddles about a bit. The opening is unnecessary, where the companions are running. I mean, I get they want to go across America and to find lots of silence in preparation for their fight with them 3 months later. Although why they needed to take 3 months, I don't know. And the fact that the FBI are hunting them down for absolutely no reason. Was it so that they could trick the science into thinking that the Doctor, Amy, Rory, and River are enemies of the CIA, of the FBI, not the CIA, they'll be busy bothering Torchwood this year, 2011. But do the science think that the FBI hunting down our 4 protagonists means that means they're not, the FBI are not going to go against them? Even though they've got the whole, forget about memory erasing stuff when someone looks away. And yeah, no, it doesn't make sense. It's just an excuse to have everyone go on location in parts of America for a few minutes. And then the episode itself just meanders a little bit. And yeah, it doesn't quite work. So the Impossible Astronaut, great start, but Day of the Moon kind of is a little bit of a letdown. So combined, they're a good story, but one half is definitely better than the other. Moving on to number 5, we're into top 5 territory and some really good episodes here. Starting off with Night Terrors, a really great, creepy, scary, horror-esque story with some nice father-son drama. The Doctor's interactions with father and son, Alex and George, is really great. I think that's handled brilliantly, and I like Amy and Rory getting to do their own things here. Same with the Doctor's wife, which will be coming up later, as opposed to, say, A Christmas Carol, where they just push to the side. But here, it's okay. They get to go off and do their own thing. And I like the interactions between them. I like the scary stuff with the dolls. There's some really great stuff here in the transition from a human to doll that we do, the transformation. That's brilliant done. And Mark Gatiss and Richard Clark write and direct a brilliant, scary episode, with some nice, with a few nice twists, and it's quite a nice episode. It's fun, enjoyable, and quite likable. I can see why some people wouldn't say this one's a great episode. They might just say it's good, but I can't see this one being considered a outright awful episode. I can't see anyone hating it. But if you do, fair enough on you. But for me, I think this one is a great story. Moving on into the really great stuff, we now get to number 4, which is an episode I really enjoyed. The God Complex. Another great character-driven story, and a simple one that doesn't need a few sets, like a couple of other stories that are going to come up on this list in a bit. Some great character moments with the Doctor, Amy, Rory, and our small band of supporting cast, who could be one of our best supporting cast of the series, if not the best. Great tight script by Toby Whithouse, great emotions here. I will say the Doctor making Amy lose his faith in him wasn't done as well as the 7th Doctor making Ace lose faith in him in The Curse of Fenric, so the classic fans who have just heard that rejoice. You better rejoice, otherwise I'm taking that back. And the whole stuff with Rory not believing, which I forgot to cover in the review. I had to text it up. But yeah, Rory not having he doesn't believe in anything, which doesn't really make sense because he should have individual belief, as Mr. Tartar's review says in his review, that he has to believe in something. It's called individual thought. Rory has to believe, even if he's not religious, he has to believe in something. So I don't know, maybe he believes in his medical exams or something. I don't know. No, I've got beliefs, so I could probably. I might not be as targeted as much as Gibbous or Rita or Howie or Amy, but I could still. I think me and Rory would still be on a similar level of some sort of target. So yeah, that doesn't quite work. I mean, if it made sense that his beliefs weren't too big, if they weren't too important, then maybe it would have made sense. But he's got to believe in at least something, even if it's just believing in his own wife, perhaps. Then that would make sense. But actually, that would have been a good concept to go down. Actually, that could have done some good. If we had more time, we could have had a good. What if Rory lost faith in his own wife, sort of thing? If Amy outright left him for the Doctor and just ran away with him forever. So that could have been something to explore. Ultimately, Rory's pushed to the side again, which is a shame, especially as the last episode was a big Amy Rory story. Maybe actually on second thoughts, maybe that's why they didn't do that. Oh well, it doesn't matter. I think we should have at least not said that Rory didn't believe in anything. Other than some minor complaints, this episode's still a pretty fun and enjoyable episode. Okay, top 3 territory, and all of these episodes are 10 out of 10, which means they have more 10 out of 10s in this series than Series 3 does, actually, which is surprising. And Series 5, actually, I think. No, same number as Series 5. I think Series 3's only got 2. And we start off with The Girl Who Waited. One of the 2 episodes that are widely considered the best story of the series, along with my personal number 1 pick. This is a great emotional story for Amy and Rory, as Rory now has to decide which wife he wants when Amy gets trapped in a separate timeline, and when the Doctor and Rory try to rescue her, they end up becoming 36 years late. But there is time to rescue the younger Amy, but older Amy will only help if they take her with them. So Rory now has to decide what wife he wants, and this is a great character growth story for Rory Williams and Amy Pond. Brilliant stuff here, and definitely shows some sort of consequences whilst travelling in the TARDIS. The God Complex also manages to show this as well, and it's just a brilliant character-driven story and quite a fun and even a little bit imaginative. It may not look imaginative, but it's quite imaginative. Tom McRae comes back from Series 2, writing the Cyberman 2, the Parallel World Cyberman 2-parter, Rise of the Cybermen, The Age of Steel, to do another great script for this series. It's a shame he never came back after this one. He did a great job twice, and it's a shame he didn't come back again. But thankfully, this time round, it was another hit out of the park. Unlike Matthew Graham, who also returns from Series 2 and fails to not even get the ball off the ground, especially in this series. I'm still going to say Rebel Flesh will miss people is better than Fear Her. So is Let's Kill Hitler, don't worry. Well, it depends which one of those two you dislike more. But going back to Tom McRae, yeah, brilliant script by McRae, does an absolutely brilliant job, and this is Nick Hurren's first episode, or at least the first one transmitted to be directed by Nick Hurren, and he'll go on to direct a couple more stories in Series 7. I think he does A Town Called Mercy. I might be wrong with that. He definitely does Asylum with the Daleks, and he'll then do the Day of the Doctor. So, yeah, this is a great episode. This is a great debut directional episode for Nick Hurren for Doctor Who. It's probably not his debut directional episode, but it's his debut directing Doctor Who, and he does a fantastic job. And that's it from Series 6 Part 2. My favourite episode was The Girl Who Waited, and a quick mini ranking of that. Number 6 would be Let's Kill Hitler. Number 5 would be The Wedding of River Song. Number 4 would be Closing Time. Number 3 would be Night Terrors. Number 2 would be The God Complex, and number 1 is The Girl Who Waited. Side note, The Christmas Carol does not really fit into a series, into a part 1 or part 2. If at closest, it would be part 1 because it's just before part 1, but it's kind of its own thing. But anyway, moving on to the top 2, which are both from Series 6 Part 1. Series 6 Part 2 is a bit more of a mixed bag, but Series 6 Part 1 is a bit stronger. Starting off with number 2, the Series 6 Part 1 mid-series finale, A Good Man Goes to War. This episode is epic. This is a fantastic story. It's the best one with the series arc. It's the best one for... It's not the best one for character growth. I would say that would go to the Girl Who Waited for Amy and Rory, and possibly the Doctor's wife for the Doctor, and I would even say The Wedding River Song for River Song. Well, that or The Impossible Astronaut, Day of the Moon. Definitely not Let's Kill Hitler. This one doesn't really have an awful lot of River character growth. She shows up twice. That's the second time to reveal who she is. But in the meantime, we're focused on other characters helping the Doctor rescue Amy and baby Melody Pond from the Silence and Madame Kavarian. And it's a great episode. Some really great stuff. Really brilliant. The only real downside is that they couldn't get any other notable characters from the show or expanded media to pop up to help save the Doctor. It would have been so awesome just to see several faces. That could have just been... That could have been a whole series' worth of fan service. Stephen Moffat wouldn't have to worry about adding any fan service in any episode until Christmas, or earliest, or until the start of Series 7. So it could have had the entire series' worth of fan service just turning up to save the day. Think of like end of Avengers Endgame or Star Wars Episode 9: The Rise of Skywalker, something akin to that. So it could have been. That's the only downside. We could have had even more people turn up to help the Doctor, even if they weren't all there for the final fights. They could have still turned up for the main bit. But that's my only criticism. Well, it's not even a criticism, it's just a nitpick. But this episode is awesome, fantastic performances, fantastic character growth, great direction. The script is on point. We learn a little bit about stuff already, but there's still enough to wait until the end of the series, as well as what's coming up later on. And I think it's handled really well. If this was the series finale, this one definitely could rival the last series' finale as well. I think the last series' finale is the second best of the new series. The Pandora opens the Big Bang. As of the first 6 series, it's the second best. But this one would definitely have been a rival for that position. It could have been the third best of the series finales of series 1 to 6, but it's only the mid-series finale. But it's still a really awesome and enjoyable episode, and it's just a great, great episode. Unfortunately, it does mean that does mean the start of the decline of Series 6 and of the Stephen Moffat era, which is a shame. It seemed that Moffat peaked too soon in terms of a showrunner. As individual episodes, there are going to be further peaks to come, but in terms of the showrunning, he kind of peaked a bit soon, which is a bit of a shame. Thankfully, Series 6 Part 2 is not bad. Series 6 Part 2 is a bit of a 50-50, although more of it is good than bad. But yeah, I think Series 6 Part 1 was definitely the stronger half. And now we come to the best episode of Series 6, which is in the first half. Written by Neil Gaiman and guest starring Saran Jones as Idris, aka the TARDIS. The Doctor's Wife is my personal favourite episode of Doctor Who Series 6, aka Season 32. This is just a great story. Neil Gaiman does a brilliantly constructed story, got some great supporting cast here. Whilst I might say not closing down, the God Complex or A Good Man Goes to War has the best supporting characters and best supporting cast, Doctor's Wife has a great one, and a great supporting cast. It's nice to see the Ood again. Michael Sheen is great as House, and it's a brilliant emotional episode for the Doctor and the TARDIS, who's been placed in the body of Idris. And the episode is around their relationship. Meanwhile, Amy and Rory also go off and do their own thing. But like Night Terrors, it's great and works well with the story, and also plays around with House as a villain. It works really well, and I love that in the first just under quarter of an hour, the first third of the episode, or just under. The Doctor even believes that there might be other Time Lords out there. We might meet the Corsair. We might meet a few other Time Lords. We could find out who sent that voice message. We could find out that person who sent the voice message. That sounds like Paul McGann. But yeah, it could have been a great game. It got kind of implied we could have had the Doctor's going to find some more Time Lords. This could have been a game changer. But it turns out it was a red herring. But unlike saying "Let's kill Hitler," basically lying about the premise of the episode, basically making the audience think it's about something, but turns out it's completely different. Unlike that one where it just flat out lies, this one is nice. It's kind of building it up, and then suddenly, ooh, yeah, ow, that's not gonna. The Doctor's not gonna like that when we find out what's actually happening. We're kind of, poor Doctor. Oh, he's not going to be happy now, is he? That was a great moment, and this episode is full of great stuff happening. It's just a shame it's 45 minutes. I mean, apparently there was about a quarter of an hour of more TARDIS corridor stuff, and whilst maybe we don't need all of it, we could have had a little bit more. Possibly, but what we got was really great, and it was nice to go back to the 9th and 10th Doctor's console room for just a little bit of a nice touch. Would have been even more fun if we got to glimpse of other TARDIS rooms. Mind you, the next story we do glimpse at some other rooms in the TARDIS. The episode itself isn't very good, so maybe it was for the best. And the TARDIS corridors are definitely more aesthetically pleasing than a Victorian hospital, like in the Invasion of Time. And we don't spend as long running through those corridors as we do in that story. So, anyway, The Doctor's Wife, brilliant episode, absolutely masterpiecely put together, and just wonderfully handled. Brilliant script by Neil Gaiman, brilliantly directed by Richard Clark, who also directs Night Terrors this series. Fantastic performances from our main and guest cast, and just a wonderful, wonderful ride of a roller coaster. A brilliant episode. It's also nice to see that junk TARDIS. That is a nice junk TARDIS. I'll just quickly say what my Series 6 Part 1 ranking would be quickly. Number 5 would be the Rebel Flesh and the Almost People. Number 4 would be the Ghost of the Black Spot. Number 3, the Impossible Astronaut and Day of the Moon. Number 2, A Good Man Goes to War. And number 1, The Doctor's Wife. And I would put A Christmas Carol in between Curse of the Black Spot and Impossible Astronaut Day of the Moon, if that counted as a part 1 episode. And that ends my Series 6 ranking. To wrap up the overall ranking, number 12, The Rebel Flesh and the Almost People. Number 11, Let's Kill Hitler. Number 10, The Curse of the Black Spot. I just noticed on my little thing I forgot to write black spot, the words black spot, down. Number 9, The Wedding of River Song. Number 8, Closing Time. Number 7, A Christmas Carol. Number 6, The Impossible Astronaut and Day of the Moon. Number 5, Night Terrors. Number 4, The God Complex. Number 3, The Girl Who Waited. Number 2, A Good Man Goes to War. And number 1, The Doctor's Wife. So that was Series 6, and after rewatching that, I thought this was a really great series. Yeah, the series arc kind of came to a disappointing conclusion at the end, and Let's Kill Hitler was a massive disappointment. But then we also got episodes like A Good Man Goes to War, which was fucking awesome. And we've also had great standalone episodes like The Doctor's Wife, The Girl Who Waited, God Complex, Night Terrors. Got some really great stuff in this series, and even stuff like Closing Time and The Wedding of a Song had some great moments throughout, but there was also some bad stuff. So overall, the stories kind of came to a meh resolution, because they were kind of a mix of awesome and shit. They were kind of a mix of the two, so they ultimately came as meh. Curse of the Black Spot, I don't really care for that much. Rebel Flesh and the Almost People, I don't think I think is a bad story. And Let's Kill Hitler, the less said about that, the better. Impossible Astronaut started off awesomely, but Day of the Moon muddled about a bit, and ultimately that story again ultimately that let the story down a little bit, and The Christmas Carol is a fun Christmas special. So, I like Series 6. Yeah, there are some duds. Looking at you, Rebel Flesh, Almost People, and Let's Kill Hitler, and some of the meh stories are let down by some really terrible stuff, but are then again redeemed by some really awesome stuff. But there's definitely more positive than bad. Like I said, there's the mess stories there are some awesome stuff in those, and there's plenty of good episodes. There's even a couple of awesome episodes. So Series 6 is not a terrible series in my opinion. It's actually a really good series. It's just that you've got some pretty shit stuff in the series. Even if it's either it's shit parts of an otherwise great story, which ultimately means it would be meh, or it's a weak story anyway. And the two weakest stories of the new series at the time of this series' airing are definitely in this series, which is a shame. And one of them is written by the same writer who wrote the previous weakest story of the new series prior to this point, and still will be in the top 3 as of the end of Series 6. But overall, I think Series 6 is a great series. Is it the weakest of the first 6 series? It's between this and Series 2. Oh, it's so difficult. Yes. Okay, yes. But I still think it's going to be stronger than most of the series coming up. I think out of the next 6 series coming up, I think only one of the next 6 series are better than Series 6. I think the rest are weaker. Previously, I did have Series 6 under Series 11 and 12, but that after rewatching this series, I think that's changed now. I think I would take Series 6 over both Series 11 and 12, but Series 10 might still be above it. Series 1 to 5 definitely are, including Series 2 people who aren't so keen on Series 2. But yeah, it's the weakest series so far, but it's going to be better than all but one of the series coming up. And I might even change my mind on Series 10 when we get to that. But anything can happen in the next 6 series, so we'll wait and see. But yeah, I like Series 6. I think it's a great series, bar some bad episodes and some bad parts of meh episodes that would have been great if it wasn't for these bad moments. So yeah, or something that kind of lets the story down. So that's it from my ranking of Doctor Who Series 6, aka Season 32. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time when we start the reviews of Doctor Who Series 7, aka Series 33, starting with The Doctor, the Widow and the Wardrobe, the 2011 Christmas Special. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye. Don't forget to click below to subscribe to the official Nicholas Payne Retro YouTube channel.